Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
Today we're going to be having a look at the overall Chinese army, the Chinese Nationalist army for our bolt action game. This is the complete army finished, so we kind of thought we'd do a sort of end of season video based on it.
Yep.
Yeah, you've seen individual videos on each individual unit, so this is just the whole army as a whole. So, do you want to run us through the units?
Yep. Here we have 3 units of Chinese regular infantry, or veteran, depending what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which equals what? 3 units equal squads?
A company.
A company.
There's three squads making a platoon, sorry. Yeah, three squads make a platoon.
And we have, if I can find it, a unit of Dare to Die troops.
Yeah.
And a Polikarpov I-15, which isn't the greatest, but it was good for its time.
But it's better than the Russian version, because the Chinese version had 2 extra machine guns. So it does give you those extra 8 dice.
Yeah, I suppose it does.
Yeah, it's always a good thing.
And we have the, at the back there, we have Opel trucks, which are just what carry infantry on, don't they?
Yeah, they're German trucks that were built in America, those ones.
And next to it is the Polikarpov I-16, if you could point it, can I point it?
That one there?
Yeah. And we have a 2 BA-10s, which are basically armoured cars but filled with a howitzer.
Yeah. No.
No, anti-tank gun.
Yeah.
I think howitzers mix up something.
They're one of my favourite armoured cars because they can either fire 2 machine guns or an anti-tank gun and a machine gun.
Yeah, and they have good frontal armour.
Yeah.
7+.
Yeah, it's just an armoured car, so it's quite cool.
And next to it, if you can point to it, 3 T-26s. And below it is the British Vickers Garden Lloyd.
Yeah.
Which little mini things, which
these little, they're tankettes.
Which have proven good in some matches.
Yeah.
And next to them, here we have our forward observer. Wait, is that a forward observer?
Yes.
Right, it's just forward. Weird. And here is an armoured car, which I cannot pronounce.
SDKF said 222.
Yep, that thing. I can't pronounce that. SDKF said 222.
Yeah, it's an anecdote.
Alright. And in front of them is 1 unit, one lieutenant squad unit, which help your units survive morale.
Yeah.
And next we have one. We've only got 1 sniper rifle, you? Wow.
Yeah, we've only got 1 sniper at the moment.
1 sniper, and next to the sniper is a mortar going down line, and next to them is 2 anti-tank rifles. There. That's the army as it stands so far.
Yeah, so this army is basically finished as far as it stands now. We may add units to it later, but this is really as much work we're going to do on it at the moment.
Yeah.
Before we complete our other armies. All the figures are based on clear plastic bases, so you can basically see through them. And I think it looks really good when you're having a map like this. This is a town mat, and so you can actually see the roads through it, and you don't have to worry about how your basic figures, because all your figures are actually clear plastic bases, so you can see through the
So it looks
base.
like they're on that terrain.
Yeah, and it's going to look really good for our Hail Caesar stuff. We've just rebased the first unit of Hail Caesar.
And it looks really cool.
And it really does look good, so we'll do a video on that later, actually, shall we?
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Without World War II bolt action stuff, we've done a playlist for each army, and we've gone unit by unit for each unit that we've got, and just sort of talking about the rules for each unit and how we use them and any tactical ideas. and the paint job that they've got.
I do believe this is, you have done Chinese, yeah?
We've done all the Chinese now. So the Chinese army is finished, but we may add units later, because this is a 1937 to 1940 army. So obviously if you're going to do 42, 43, then you're going to have Chinese troops with more British and American equipment, whereas this is the Chinese Nationalist army. These guys wore German uniforms, although they were a green colour, the colour you can see them. So you can use German figures for them. They used Russian aircraft, American aircraft and British aircraft. At the moment we've only got Russian aircraft for them.
Yep.
They used trucks from any country they could buy them from. They used Soviet armoured cars, which is the BA-10s, which are these here. German armoured cars. They used British light tanks, Russian medium tanks, or light tanks, a medium tank for the period. So they used Russian medium tanks, and basically if you want to do an early war army and use everything in it, the Chinese army is great because you can use a bit of everything. They used every nationality equipment.
Yeah.
Because they bought it from anywhere. Chiang Kai-shek's army was originally, the Nationalist army, was originally mainly supplied by Germany. The Chinese were massive allies of the Germans, and the Chinese army was trained by German officers. It gave orders in both German and English. The English because English was the universal language, and a lot of the manuals and stuff that came with the weapons and kit were written in English. So they were trained, because in China you speak multiple dialects, roughly the same language but they're all different dialects. So they were trained to either speak German or English. It was really a end of the warlord China period. Chiang Kai-shek tried to gather all the main warlords together and form them into one army. And they took a lot of the old tanks that a lot of the individual warlords had and put them into two complete armoured brigades. The German trainers trained the troops in German combat tactics, and basically it was a German army abroad. So the troops were called stormtroopers. And there were a few different Chinese orientated things like the suicide troops at the back, the dare to die troops. They're typically Chinese. But everything else was pretty much European training, European kit, European combat doctrine, and it was pretty much a European army operating in China. This is the army that took on the Japanese for the first part of the war. This is the army that pinned down the Japanese for most of the war. This is the army that failed to stop the Japanese taking most of the Chinese cities, although they put up one hell of a fight against the Japanese.
Unless they're playing bolt action.
Unless they play bolt action. They lose every... they lose every time. They just can't win. But that's a look at the dice more than anything else. But this is a really, really good army. And it was facing the Japanese army, which was one of the highest trained, best motivated armies in the world. And had this Chinese nationalist army not existed, and had not been trained by the Germans, and had not been equipped by the Russians, or the Germans, or the British, and the Americans, it's quite likely it would have been completely destroyed, and China would have lost. Perhaps a downside to playing this army was that the officers had a kind of tendency to sort of do a victory or death sort of thing. So they would order troops to stay in one place and hold, and they would get annihilated, but it would mean those veteran troops wouldn't be able to be withdrawn and bolster the army elsewhere. Also, the Chinese army, just like the Japanese army, they didn't tend to disband units. When a unit took a lot of hits, a lot of casualties, they would put new reserves into the unit. So it slowly degraded the quality of the actual soldiers, because you had veteran troops mixed with non-veteran troops as it went down.
Yeah.
You got any more things to comment on?
Not really, because they basically have the same support troops as any other army.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're using German equipment. They use German mortars, Russian anti-tank rifles. They're pretty much they used anything they could get their hands on. As time went on, they got a lot more British equipment. They also used Japanese equipment. So yeah, it's an interesting army to play with because it isn't a normal army. Most people don't even know China was fighting in the Second World War. They don't realise that China was the second biggest front in the Second World War. The first being the Eastern Front. The second biggest front was the Chinese front, and then all the others were just minor compared to what was going on. The American experience of the Pacific War was mainly the island hopping campaign, which was nothing compared to what was going on in China. China had its own Stalingrad at, was it Wuhan? Or Chengdu?
Yeah.
It was Chengdu, wasn't it? Chengdu?
Yeah, Chengdu.
Yeah. At Chengdu, the Japanese had their Stalingrad when an entire army group was trapped in the city of Chengdu and was pretty much annihilated. Just in the same way that the Germans had an entire army group trapped in Stalingrad and annihilated.
No, because the Russians won in the end.
Yeah, the Chinese, that's what I said, the Germans were annihilated.
Oh yeah, sorry.
It's very hard to lose an entire army group and carry on fighting. And from then on, the Japanese were on the back foot in China.
They're fighting on 3 fronts.
Yeah, that was pretty much. Let's see. That was 1941, middle of 1941, I think. And after that, Japan was really on the back foot. So they lost a lot of their best troops there. Wuhan was also pretty much a disaster for the Chinese. Although they technically won the battle, they lost a lot of their veteran troops. So yeah, China was the meat grinder of the Japanese army, and constantly sending troops in to fight these guys, and these guys just kept fighting and just wouldn't give up, just like the Soviets. They just wouldn't quit. Yeah, there's another army for the Chinese, and that's the Chinese Communist Army, which is actually a different army to this army. The Communist Chinese fought their own private war against the Japanese. For the most part, the Chinese Nationalists called a truce with the Communists, although the Nationalists took any opportunity they could to stab the Communists in the back, because they just didn't get along. There was a unified command for a very short amount of time, around about 1938, where the Communist forces tried to fight alongside the Nationalist forces. That didn't really work out to great effect, but at least they made the effort.
Yep.
It would be a bit like, well, actually it is. It's a bit like the Ukrainian troops, the Ukrainian insurgent troops fighting against the communists, and then fighting on the side of the Germans when the Germans invaded, and then changing sides to fight for the Russians, and then changing sides to fight for the Germans. It's a little bit like that. The Eastern Front was a very complicated place. Yeah, so that's it. That's really the end of it. Have you got any overall things to add?
Not to the army, no. I think I added all the arrows to the army during the separate parts, which you should check out.
Yes. Well, this is just a sort of overview to the army.
Although I do think they could have at least made better or bought better planes than what they had currently.
Well, they deliberately outgunned the I-16, which is the one at the back. The I-15, the biplane. They outgunned that. They added 2 extra machine guns to it to give it more firepower. And at the time they bought them from the Russians, these planes were some of the best planes in the world. It's just they're up against the Japanese, who happen to have slightly better planes.
They made their own.
Well, yeah, they designed their own planes separate, and no one knew what was going on. Yeah, so it's an interesting point is most of the pilots for the Chinese army were actually Russian.
Yeah, you told me that, didn't you?
Yeah,
like in Battle for Britain, most of the pilots were British.
No, they were Polish because they were pilots with combat experience, and Poland had a lot of air combat experience against the Germans because they not only fought the Germans when the Germans invaded them, they also fought in France. And Churchill rather wisely withdrew the Polish air units because they were veteran from France to defend Britain. So when the Battle of Britain started, we had a lot of well-trained.
It's a bit of fought by himself.
Yeah, I think there were 30 air races that the Polish had, which is pretty good. That's more than we had.
Well, no, that's because we need to fight. We waited until they came to us, then we fought. We had no experience.
Yeah, pretty much. we used to drop in bombs on people in the desert who refused to pay taxes.
Yeah.
So
pay taxes.
We didn't have we had an air force. We didn't have an air force that was trained to operate with ground units. We didn't have an air force that had a lot of very, very well trained pilots. We had.
No, we had the RAF.
Yeah, well, the RAF was very lackadaisy prior to the war. When it comes to training. It was more to do with moving aircraft around the country than it was to actually training in air combat because they didn't have time to train because they were shifting aircraft so quickly. So there was a kind of lack of air combat training. Then when it came to actually fighting, our planes were defective. The Spitfire cannons didn't work. They were supposed to fire high explosive rounds, and none of the rounds ever went off.
But still, Spitfire apparently is the greatest plane ever.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't. It was a propaganda machine. It looked nice on camera. And so we said, yes, our Spitfires will win. It was the Hurricane that was the backbone of the British Army. And the Hurricane only won because it had 12 guns. And it fired all 12 guns at the same time in the vain hope it will hit something important.
One bullet will hit something eventually.
Yeah, some of the German planes only had one gun. But it was a really good gun that knocked you out of the sky if it hit you. The machine gun on most German planes was simply used as tracer.
Japanese, they had good guns but no armour.
Yeah, because they hoped to catch you before you catch them.
And they did.
And they did.
They wiped out the entire Russian Air Force, so I suppose that works, right?
Yeah, they actually the Russians were actually the ones attacking where they weren't taken by surprise. But the Japanese managed to wipe the Russian Air Force out of the sky.
And the Russians had more planes than the Japanese.
Although most of the Russian planes weren't shot down by the Japanese, they were actually stranded on airfields. The Japanese bombed the airfield, so the Russian planes couldn't take off. And then, so that a lot of the Russian planes survived the war, they just couldn't take off.
But the Russians had one good luck from their side. Hitler has just surrendered. So that means everyone was concentrating on Japan.
Yeah.
The rest of the war, that finished them off.
So for this period of the war, the planes aren't that bad. The T-26 here probably is not a very good tank. It's quite an old tank. It's not really one that's up to date. But it was better than a lot of the Japanese stuff because the Japanese had some really rubbish tanks. So if you've got one of these on the battlefield, you're probably going to be able to kill any Japanese tank that they've got.
Yeah, they're using the Japanese army next.
Yeah.
We'll show you one. They're really nice. They're so good. They're amazing.
Yeah, the Japanese tank army was a bit of a joke, but it did what it said on the tin. It was basically a machine gun platform tank for the Japanese.
A moving machine gun.
Yeah, a moving machine gun. That's all the Japanese needed. And for the most part, they weren't fighting tanks, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, they're living in islands, so yeah. You can't drive over the border.
The armoured cars were, from what little we know of the period, the Chinese very much liked the Russian armoured cars. They were used a lot for security and recon. I think about 100 of them were used outside Shanghai, the Battle of Shanghai. And they use hit and run tactics, which is good because you can actually use the recce special rule for these, which we didn't mention when we did the actual video for it.
That's because we've only just started using recce.
We've only really started using it as an actual.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been doing those sort of games where We have. We haven't been doing Recce sort of games.
The one we've been using is your motorbike.
Yeah, most of the stuff we've been doing is city fighting and stuff like that. So, actually using them for scouting and stuff, yeah, they work really well. Same with the German armoured car, the SDKS 222. They also use Panzer Ones. Now, I made a set of Panzer Ones, but they got broken when we did the room. So I'm going to have to make a new set. So that is not in this army at the moment, which I don't apologise for. It wasn't my fault. But I also lost my Japanese gliders as well.
What?
I just made a new set. I just made 2 new ones.
Oh, they're the ones you're building now, right?
Yeah, because the other 2 broke when we changed the room.
I thought you were just doing extra ones.
They're in a box and they got squished. So we lost our light tanks and our Japanese gliders and a few other bits and bobs.
Well, the old one was annoying us when we were down there, so...
Yeah.
And it was in.
Yeah. So, anyway, as an army as a whole, I like this army. It's a very colourful, nice army. I like the green uniforms, the really weird way of painting Germans as Japanese, German as Chinese. You can use a bit of everything. The great thing is we've been building a German army and a Chinese army. And a Russian army. So as we've been building the Russian army, I've just been doing a few extra things up, like these, and painting them in Chinese colours, because both sides use, the Russians use them as well as these guys.
Yeah, every country uses them.
Yeah.
T-26s are really popular.
They got sold to everybody. The Russians made tens of thousands of them. And they sold them all over the world. They even sold 2 to Finland before they invaded it.
What? The enemy?
Yeah, so the Finns got to practice with it and work out its weaknesses.
And then they invaded them. Those get strings.
It's the same with the Tiger tank. The first 3 Tigers off the production line were sent straight into battle. One of them got stuck in a bog. The Russians captured it. So by the time the actual Tigers were used at battalion level, the Russians had already practiced fighting Tigers, worked out how to kill them, and so... complete waste of time.
And the Russians found out that it's extremely hard to kill, and that every other country is going to have a hard time.
Well, actually, the Russians started upgunning their tanks to the L41, the 76 L41 instead of the L26, I think it was. They changed the calibre, they changed the velocity of the gun, so it became a squeeze velocity anti-tank gun. So by the time the Tiger came out, every Russian tank could more or less kill it.
Unless it's like millions of them streaming over the border.
Well, most battles are fought at 500 yards, and any tank can kill any tank at 500 yards, regardless of how big your tank is. Or some of the very late war German tanks, you couldn't kill that at point blank. You had to wait for it to run out of fuel, and then hopefully bring you some bombers and bomb it.
So bolt action did create a problem when I had an anti-tank rifle point blank in front of me and I missed.
Oh yeah, you can miss. There's nothing wrong with missing. Missing's fine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with missing. Might get shot at.
Anyway,
last bullet. Oh, missed. Oh my god.
As I mentioned, most of the pilots for the Russian planes were actually Russian. They were actually Russian-trained pilots flying their own plane, painted up in Chinese colours. They were advised not to be shot down, because if they got shot down, they couldn't be taken prisoner, because it would prove that Russia was aiding China in the war. Later on, Russia went to war with Japan, and, well, that was no score draw, really. Russia had to sue for peace very quickly after the Battle of Katlin Gol, because they were about to invade Poland. And they didn't want to... Stalin wasn't an idiot, and he didn't want to be at war with Japan at the same time as in war with Germany, because, well, he'd have lost.
Well, I would rather have that happen, because then the Pearl Harbor would have happened.
Yes, there would have been no Pearl Harbor. America would never have been attacked by Japan. So, it was because Russia sued for peace...
Pearl Harbor happened.
Pearl Harbor happened. So, had that not happened, America would never have entered the war.
Mm-hmm.
And thousands of 600,000 American soldiers wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
And 1 million American soldiers wouldn't have been wounded. So that would have saved America a fortune in the long run.
Yes, that's worth a lot.
Yeah, and Nazi Germany would still have lost.
Yeah, they were already losing at the time.
Fighting the Russians anyway, it wouldn't have made any difference. There's no way.
No fancy getting one with every single front.
Yeah.
So.
However, it would also have meant. So the Russian planes had Russian pilots. The 300 odd Russian planes sold. About 150 to 170 Russian pilots went over to fly them. So that was a way of sort of getting an instant air force. Then the Chinese also had the Flying Tigers, although they weren't around at this time. There was a squadron of Flying Tigers before the Flying Tigers, which the Flying Tigers eventually turned into. They were already there. And they were volunteer pilots. Most of the Flying Tigers were Chinese. They weren't American. They were Chinese-born American, or Chinese who had emigrated to America. And they volunteered to go back home and fight for China.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting one. And with the video about that plane, I went into the history of one of the pilots who was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a 30-minute video.
Yeah, he's a Chinese air race, American-born Chinese air race, and he was shot down and burnt. And his plane was on fire when it crashed. Captured by the Japanese, escaped, managed to get to Hong Kong, which was British at that point, and managed to smuggle his way back into China after medical treatment and became a pilot again. So.
And then was shot down again?
And he was shot down again. But the guy was awesome. It was a genuine Bigglesworth.
Did you make a film about that?
Yeah, he did. There is a film about it, but it's in Chinese. If you want to watch it.
There's lots of movies what I would like to see.
They're in Chinese.
But they're in Chinese and they have English subtitles.
Yeah.
And I don't like reading.
Well, the only problem with the film is he's got his girlfriend in it and the woman he's in love with and stuff, and that never happened. They do that with films. They have
to have some romance.
Yeah, they get, like, Pearl Harbor, the most important thing that ever happened to America after the Declaration of Independence was Pearl Harbor. And what do? They turn it into a love story where the nurse is in love with a man who apparently went to Britain to fight in the RAF for some reason. And what? No, grow up. But yeah, I mean, the fact is, the two guys they're based on in the Pearl Harbor film were real people. And they really were really good pilots. And they shot down Japanese planes on the day. But then you pull on their heads and say, we're going to make two guys up who did it instead. Well, why don't you use real guys? They were real people who existed. You know? They got medals and stuff. They were really great guys who actually fought the Japanese. They were the only guys to get off the ground and survive. And yet you don't make the film about them. No, you make the film about some made-up Ben Affleck type characters.
And there's Michael Bay. And
explosions. And then there's explosions. Yeah, so there you go. And the only thing missing from that film is a helicopter and a transformer. That is all the film needed to make it better. Just one transformer would have made the difference in that film.
Maybe a Terminator.
It's not Cameron. Was that Cameron who made? Yeah.
I'm sure Michael Bay directed one of them.
Who did the Terminator films? That was Cameron, wasn't it? I'm sure that was Cameron.
Yeah, I think it was.
I'm not in film mood at the moment.
He acts just like Michael Bay. I think he wants to be Michael Bay wannabe.
Yeah. So a lot of the pilots operating were actually foreign pilots, but they were Chinese foreign pilots, which is weird. There was a name for it. I can't remember it at the moment. I do go into it in detail in if you look at the video with that on the front. I did a video about that.
It has a flag and everything on the front of it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've been changing them to make them look a little bit cooler. So I've lost my train of thought now from where we were going.
I smart.
No, I'm not. I'm not smart at all.
Everyone's like, you're not really know. I'm quite stupid.
I spent my entire life learning stuff. I remember when you did this when you were at school. Oh, yeah, you are at school. But,
I'm about to say I'm supposed to.
When I was at school, the teacher said, we're going to do a thing called Operation Barbarossa.
Oh, yeah, we did that.
Yeah, and I knew all about it. 216 divisions. Sir!
I can't, just like him.
Yeah, so you're the same, because I've turned you into a mini-me, really.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I used to have every day wow history lesson from him.
Yeah.
And now I'm here.
You like history though, you're into history, but you're into all history.
Yeah.
So.
Although I prefer the War of the Foreigners.
Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Imperial Rome. That really was an interesting time to live. Actually, no, right now is an interesting time to live. With Western civilization collapsing and everything. It's a really interesting time to be alive.
When you started this video, that was history.
Yeah, that was history.
25 minutes ago.
Just imagine being one of these Chinese soldiers in China at the time. And Japan's just invaded you. And they've just taken your capital city and they're marching on the next capital. The great thing about China, you've got so many big cities that every time the Japanese took a city, they just renamed another city the capital city. So you started off with, was it Beijing, and then Nanking was the capital. Nanking was Shanghai was lost, then Nanking was lost, and then it moved to Wuhan.
We actually did a battle of Wuhan. I don't know.
Yes, we did.
And the Japanese won.
Yeah, actually, it was after the Battle of Wuhan. It was when the armed forces tried to withdraw down the road, and the Japanese, a handful of Japanese, tried to sort of left hook them, and they tried to hit them on the flank. And in real life, it failed, but
bolt action,
we did it, and I just got really bad dice playing Chinese.
And the whole people running away just got massacred. And only him was left, and he got burned by a flamethrower.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that flamethrower. When you use a flamethrower in bolt action against an open top vehicle, just give up. Just don't let it get anywhere near you.
Bye-bye.
Because the flamethrower gets that +1 because it's an open top vehicle. So,
and
when you're an armoured car, an open top armoured car, you may as well just be a soft skinned truck.
Or just a human.
Or just a human,
yeah.
That flamethrower was deadly in that game. And you never ran out of fuel. I always run out of fuel with flamethrowers. I always roll the 2. And that's it, I'm out of fuel, I've had it.
6, 5, yeah.
Just 6 and 5s constantly. Yeah, anyway, that's all by the by. Sadly, the Chinese never actually went in for flamethrowers. So I can't really feel it as a unit.
Oh, too bad for you.
Yeah.
Too bad for you.
The downside of these figures, that was a moth that just attacked the camera. Where's that come from?
Oh.
Good catch! That's animal cruelty, that.
I know. I just killed them off.
What did you do that for?
I didn't mean to.
What did it do to you?
I was expecting to catch it.
Good God. Anyway, it's obviously a spy. I would like to have had some Chinese troops with gas masks and stuff like that. That would have looked really cool. And I was going to make up some assault engineers. But I think that's going to be a project for the future. I was thinking of using the Japanese figures for it.
What?
For what I just said.
Alright.
You weren't listening, were you?
I was having to mock blood off my hand. I'm sorry.
For anyone at home, please never make a YouTube video with either an animal or a small child. In which case, this is both of them. Anyway.
It's called an animal.
No, it's called you a small child.
What about, you said both of them though?
Yeah, the moth.
The moth's not an animal, it's an insect.
Well, it's an insect then. Never work with insects or small children.
What was that, your servant?
No. So yeah, so this is the overall Chinese army for early war. That's it. That's really the end of the video. I think we've done enough waffling about it.
About 30 minutes long? Huh?
Yeah. So, do you play with this army much?
No, I never.
So I'm always the one that plays Chinese.
Japanese.
Right. Yeah. There we go then.
I love the Japanese army.
That's the end of this video, and that's the end of this army so far. It's been a long journey. It's taken a long time to get to where we are. It's taken a lot of work to build it, and a lot of work to put it together, and a lot of reading and researching.
I remember when we were on holiday, and this way came with the idea. I said, "We want to do that. Seriously, do video by video by video of each unit." And guess what my answer was? No. Right? Next time I said it, no. Came back from holiday, no. Game room, yes. That's how it works. That's how he gets to me to make videos. So repeats himself.
we have finished, and we will finally sign out of the video because I'm sure you are bored senseless of watching it by now. No?
No, definitely, yeah.
No.
I'm on it. Sorry.
You will be seeing this army in action soon because we've got a campaign coming up set in China, which will be an interesting one.
I'm playing Japanese.
You always play Japanese, you're boring. And that's it, that's the end of this. Upcoming, we have the Japanese army, as he keeps mentioning. We have the Polish army
to finish.
And we have the Russian army, which we're going to do as a whole. We've actually finished the videos for the Russian army, but we haven't done an overview.
Here we are.
Did we do an overview?
Yeah, that was the very first video we did.
Yeah, I mean, now it's finished.
Yeah.
No, now it's finished.
Oh, I don't think we did that one.
Yeah. So, there we have it. That's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and over to him for the outtake thing.
So if you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of the Chinese army and the history behind it.
Right, so...
That's everything from me.
And that's everything from him. Goodbye.
See ya.